The vase shattered. Not because she dropped it, because Jae-hoon grabbed her wrist mid-reach and saw scars that made his blood freeze. Rope burns. Thick. Deep. The kind that told stories nobody survived intact. The kind that meant months of hell he didn't want to imagine. But his maid was standing here, alive, trembling, and the second their eyes met, she stopped breathing. Just stopped. Like her body remembered what happened when men noticed. "Who did this to you?" Wrong question. She broke. Knees hit marble, hands over her face, silent screaming. And Jae-hoon realized he'd just asked the one thing guaranteed to destroy her. That night, he'd hunt down the answer himself, and every man responsible would learn why the Atlanta underworld feared his name. Hey there, quick question. If you saw someone's scars and knew exactly what kind of hell they'd survived, would you ask about it or stay silent? That's the choice Jae-hoon just made, and honestly, he chose wrong. What do you think he should have done? Drop your answer and subscribe, because what happens next changes everything. Let's go. Jae-hoon didn't usually pay attention to the staff. They moved through his Atlanta penthouse like shadows, cleaning, organizing, disappearing before he could register their faces. But today, something made him look up from the contracts scattered across his desk. The new maid was reaching for a crystal vase on the top shelf, her sleeve riding up just enough to expose her forearm. That's when he saw them. Thick, raised scars that wrapped around her wrist like rope marks, disappearing under the black fabric of her uniform. His jaw tightened. He'd seen scars like that before. They told stories nobody wanted to hear. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice cutting through the quiet room. She flinched, nearly dropping the vase. "Keiza, sir." "Where are you from, Keiza?" "Rwanda, sir." She kept her eyes down, fingers trembling as she set the vase back on the shelf. Jae-hoon leaned back in his chair, studying her. Mid-20s, maybe, with dark skin that gleamed under the afternoon light streaming through the windows. There was something about the way she held herself, like she was always ready to run. Always ready to disappear. "How long have you been in Atlanta?" 3 months, sir." He nodded slowly. "Those scars on your wrist, how'd you get them?" The question hung in the air between them. Keiza's shoulders went rigid, and for a moment, Jae-hoon thought she might bolt. But then she lifted her chin, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her eyes were darker than he'd expected, filled with something that looked like defiance mixed with fear. "Does it matter, sir?" "In my house, everything matters." She pulled her sleeve down, covering the marks. "I'd rather not talk about it." Fair enough. He went back to his papers, but he could feel her standing there, uncertain whether she was dismissed or not. "You can go." She left without another word, but Jae-hoon couldn't shake the image of those scars from his mind. He'd built his empire on reading people, on knowing when someone was hiding something worth protecting. And Keiza was definitely hiding something. That evening, he called his right-hand man, Sung-min. "Find out everything you can about the new maid, Keiza, from Rwanda." Sung-min didn't ask questions. He never did. "I'll have something by tomorrow." But tomorrow came with news that made Jae-hoon's blood run cold. "She's got nothing, boss. No records before 3 months ago. It's like she didn't exist until she showed up in Atlanta. People don't just appear out of nowhere. This one did. Or maybe someone made sure her past disappeared." Sung-min hesitated. "You want me to dig deeper? Could be trouble if she's connected to someone." Jae-hoon thought about those scars, about the way she'd looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "No. Leave it alone for now." He told himself it was because he didn't want complications, didn't want to bring unnecessary attention to his operations. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. He was curious. And in his line of work, curiosity could get you killed. The next few weeks passed with an odd sort of rhythm. Keiza came and went like clockwork, always quiet, always efficient. She never spoke unless spoken to, never made eye contact unless absolutely necessary. But Jae-hoon found himself watching her anyway, noticing small things he had no business noticing. The way she always wore long sleeves, even when it was hot. The way she jumped at sudden noises. The way she never, ever turned her back to a door. It reminded him of himself, actually, of the things he'd learned growing up in his father's house, where trust was currency and betrayal was always just one mistake away. One afternoon, he came home early and found her in his study, dusting the bookshelves. She didn't hear him come in, too focused on her work. He watched from the doorway as she paused in front of a particular book, a collection of Rwandan poetry he'd acquired years ago without really knowing why. Her fingers traced the spine in a gentle motion. Then she pulled it from the shelf and opened it, her lips moving silently as she read. "You can borrow it if you want." She slammed the book shut, spinning around with wide eyes. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's fine." He walked into the room, hands in his pockets. "You read Kinyarwanda?" "Yes, sir." "The book yours if you want it." She looked at him like he'd offered her poison. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because." She struggled for words, her accent becoming thicker with emotion. "Because people don't just give things away. There's always a price." Jae-hoon felt something twist in his chest. Yeah, he understood that. "No price, just a book collecting dust on my shelf." She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to figure out his angle, trying to understand what game he was playing. Finally, she nodded, clutching the book to her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you, sir." "Jae-hoon. You can call me Jae-hoon when it's just us." "That wouldn't be appropriate, sir." "Probably not." He smiled slightly. "But I'm saying you can anyway." She didn't respond, just ducked her head and hurried past him, still holding the book like it might disappear if she let go. After that, things shifted between them. Not dramatically, not obviously. But there was something there now, some invisible thread connecting them in ways Jae-hoon couldn't quite explain. He started leaving books out for her, poetry mostly, sometimes history. She never acknowledged them directly, but they always disappeared and reappeared, carefully placed back on the shelf with pages slightly worn from reading. And he started talking to her. Nothing important at first, just comments about the weather or asking how her day was going. She'd answer in short, careful sentences, always maintaining that professional distance. But slowly, so slowly he almost didn't notice it happening, she started talking back. "Your accent," she said one day, surprising him as he worked through financial reports. "It's different when you're on the phone. More American." He glanced up. "Code switching. Necessary in business. Must be exhausting. Being two different people." "Isn't everyone?" She considered this, her head tilting slightly. "Maybe. But some of us do it to survive. Others do it to win." "And which one are you?" "The first one." No hesitation, no shame in her voice. Always the first one. Jae-hoon set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "What are you surviving, Keza?" She met his eyes, and for just a second, he saw something raw and painful flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful blankness she wore like armor. "The same things we're all surviving, sir. Life." It wasn't an answer. Not really. But it was more than she'd given him before, and Jae-hoon found himself wanting to know everything. Every scar, every story, every reason she'd learned to look at the world like it was full of traps waiting to spring. That night, against his better judgment, he called Sung-min again. "I need you to look into something for me, quietly." "Always quiet, boss. What's the target?" "Rwandan refugees who came to the States in the last year, specifically women, mid-20s, traveling alone." Sung-min was silent for a beat too long. "This about the maid? Does it matter?" It does if you're getting attached. Jae-hoon's hand tightened on the phone. I'm not attached. I just want to know who's in my house. Sure, boss. Whatever you say. The report came 3 days later, and it made Jae-hoon wish he'd never asked. There had been an attack in a small village outside Kigali 2 years ago. Armed men, probably militia remnants from old conflicts, had raided homes looking for valuables. They'd taken prisoners, used them for forced labor and control. Most of the prisoners had been killed when government forces moved in. A few escaped in the chaos. And one woman, one survivor, had used the scars around her wrists, rope burns from being tied up for months, to claim asylum in the United States. Jae-hoon stared at the report until the words blurred together. Then he locked it in his safe and tried to pretend he'd never seen it. But he couldn't, because now when he looked at Keiza, he saw past the careful mask she wore. He saw someone who'd been broken and put herself back together with nothing but will and determination. Someone who understood, maybe better than anyone he'd ever met, what it meant to survive in a world that wanted you dead. Someone who reminded him entirely too much of himself. The next morning, he found her in the kitchen, preparing his breakfast. She moved with practiced efficiency, her hand steady as she sliced fruit and arranged it on a plate. Keiza. Yes, sir? I need you to do something for me. She turned, wariness creeping into her expression. What is it? Stop calling me sir. I've told you before that it's Jae-hoon. Just Jae-hoon. I'm not asking now. His voice was softer than the words suggested. When it's just us, no formalities. Deal? She studied him with those dark, knowing eyes. Why? Because I'm tired of being sir to everyone. Because you're the only person in this house who looks at me like I'm human instead of a paycheck. He paused, the honesty surprising even himself. Because I want to hear you say my name. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Keiza nodded, so slight he almost missed it. Okay. Jae-hoon. The way she said it, with her accent curling around the syllables, made something warm unfurl in his chest. Dangerous. This was getting dangerous. But Jae-hoon had never been good at walking away from danger. Good. He picked up a piece of mango from the plate, the sweetness bursting on his tongue. This is perfect, by the way. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, My mother taught me. Before. She didn't finish, but she didn't have to. Jae-hoon understood the weight of before, the way it hung over everything, coloring the present with shadows of the past. She taught you well. Keiza smiled, and it was small and sad and absolutely devastating. She tried to teach me lots of things, how to cook, how to be patient, how to forgive. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. I only managed the first one. Patience and forgiveness are overrated anyway. Is that what you tell yourself? The question hit harder than it should have. Jae-hoon set down the mango, his appetite suddenly gone. Every single day. They stood there in his kitchen, surrounded by marble countertops and expensive appliances that meant nothing. Two people who'd survived things they shouldn't have survived. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Jae-hoon didn't feel quite so alone. Later that week, everything changed. Jae-hoon had been in a meeting with representatives from a rival organization, hammering out territory agreements and profit splits. It was routine, boring even, until his phone buzzed with a message from his security team. Incident at the house. Handled, but you should come back. He made his excuses and left, driving faster than he should have through Atlanta traffic. By the time he reached the penthouse, his heart was pounding with a fear he didn't want to examine too closely. Sung-min met him at the door. It's not as bad as it sounds. What happened? Someone tried to break in through the service entrance, Got past the first lock before the alarm triggered. Sungmin's expression was grim. Thing is, boss, they knew the schedule. Knew when the guard rotations changed. Inside job? Looking like it. Jae-hoon's mind raced through possibilities, through lists of people who had access, who might have reason to betray him. Where's Keiza? In her room. She's pretty shaken up. She was in the kitchen when it happened. Saw the guy before the alarm went off. He took the stairs, 2 at a time, not bothering to question why finding Keiza was his first priority. Her room was at the end of the hall, a small space she kept meticulously clean. He knocked once, then pushed the door open when there was no answer. She was sitting on the bed, arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on nothing. She didn't look up when he came in. Keiza. Nothing. He sat down beside her, careful to leave space between them. You okay? I saw his face. Her voice was hollow, distant. I saw him, and I froze. Like I was back there, back in that place, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but wait for it to happen again. Jae-hoon's hands clenched into fists. Did he hurt you? No. The alarm scared him off. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were wet with unshed tears. But he could have. I was right there, and he could have taken me, and I just stood there like someone who's been through trauma and had a normal human reaction to danger. He kept his voice steady, fighting the urge to find whoever had broken in and make them pay for putting that look on her face. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm supposed to be past this. It's been 2 years, Jae-hoon. 2 years, and I'm still human, still healing. He did something he'd never done before, reaching out to take her hand in his. Her skin was cold, trembling. Healing isn't linear. It's not a deadline you meet and then everything's fine. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes you take 10 steps back for every 1 step forward. She stared at their joined hands. How do you know that? Because I've been there. The admission came easier than it should have. Different trauma, same aftermath, same late nights wondering if you'll ever feel normal again. Do you? Feel normal? Sometimes. On good days. He squeezed her hand, gently. And sometimes, I still wake up expecting my father to walk through the door with a gun and a lecture about loyalty. Keiza's eyes widened. Your father died 5 years ago, shot by someone he trusted. Jae-hoon smiled without humor. Ironic, really. He spent his whole life teaching me that trust was weakness, and it's what got him killed in the end. I'm sorry. Don't be. He wasn't a good man. He paused, then added. But he was my father, and I guess part of me still misses him sometimes. The idea of him anyway, even if the reality was something else entirely. They sat in silence, hands still clasped, 2 damaged people trying to figure out how to exist in a world that had tried to break them. Finally, Keiza spoke. Thank you. For what? For not treating me like I'm fragile. For just being here. Jae-hoon stood up, reluctantly letting go of her hand. Get some rest. I'll have extra security posted tonight. Jae-hoon, he turned back. Would you mind staying? Just for a little while. She looked embarrassed, asking. I don't want to be alone right now. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was a bad idea, that he was crossing lines he'd sworn never to cross. But the part of him that understood loneliness, that recognized a kindred spirit in her dark eyes, was louder. Yeah, I can stay. He pulled up a chair and sat by her bed, and they talked until the sun went down, about nothing and everything, about books and food and the strange beauty of Atlanta's skyline at night. And when she finally fell asleep, exhausted from fear and crying, Jae-hoon stayed right where he was, keeping watch like he could somehow protect her from all the monsters in the world. even though he knew he was probably one of them. The investigation into the break-in took 3 days, and what Sung-min found made Jae-hoon's carefully controlled world tilt sideways. It was Ji-won. Jae-hoon looked up from his desk, certain he'd heard wrong. My cousin? You're telling me my own blood tried to rob me? Not rob, gather intel. Sung-min dropped a folder on the desk. He's been feeding information to the Choi family for months. Schedules, security codes, business deals, everything. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised him. This was the life he'd chosen, the world he'd inherited from his father. Family meant nothing when money and power were on the table. But still, Ji-won had grown up in his house, eaten at his table, sworn loyalty 100 times over. Where is he now? Disappeared, probably hiding with the Chois in their compound outside Austin. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched in fury. Set up a meeting. Tell them I want Ji-won back, and I want him back now. Boss, maybe we should think this through. The Chois have been looking for an excuse to move on our territory. This could be a trap. I don't care. He put Keza in danger. The words came out harsher than he'd intended. He put my house in danger. I want him dealt with. Sung-min's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't comment on Jae-hoon's slip. I'll make the call. After he left, Jae-hoon sat alone in his study, anger and something uglier churning in his gut. He'd spent years building walls around himself, keeping everyone at arm's length, trusting no one completely. And somehow, in the space of a few weeks, a Rwandan refugee with sad eyes and rope-burned wrists had slipped past every defense he had. It terrified him. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Keza stood in the doorway, holding a tray with tea, and those little honey cakes he pretended not to like but always finished. You've been in here for hours, she said quietly. Thought you might need something. I'm fine. You're clenching your jaw so hard I can hear your teeth grinding from the hallway. She set the tray down, her movements careful, practiced. What happened? He shouldn't tell her. It wasn't her problem, wasn't her world. But the words came anyway, tumbling out like he couldn't hold them back. It was my cousin, the break-in. He's been selling me out to a rival organization. Keza's hand stilled on the teapot. Family. In name only, apparently. I'm sorry. Betrayal from family cuts deeper than anything else. She poured the tea, steam rising between them. What are you going to do? Get him back. Make him answer for what he did. And then? Jae-hoon met her eyes. Then I'll do what needs to be done. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Will it make you feel better? The revenge? Probably not. But it'll make me feel like I'm still in control, and sometimes that's enough. Keza sat down across from him, something she'd never done before. The casual intimacy of it, the way she made herself comfortable in his space, sent warmth through his chest. When I first got to America, she said slowly, I wanted revenge too. I had names, faces, plans for what I'd do if I ever found the men who hurt me. She wrapped her hands around her own cup, staring into the amber liquid. I spent months thinking about it, dreaming about it. It was the only thing that made me feel powerful. What changed? I realized that carrying all that hate was just another prison, different bars, same cage. She looked up at him. I'm not saying you should forgive him. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. But maybe there's a middle path between revenge and letting go. You're saying I should be the bigger person. I'm saying you should be the person who can sleep at night, whatever that looks like for you. Jae-hoon took a sip of tea, letting her words settle into the spaces between his anger. You're probably right. Probably. A small smile tugged at her lips. But I also know you're going to do what you're going to do, and nothing I say will change that. You know me that well already? Well enough to know you're stubborn and protective, and you don't let things go easily. Her smile faded. Just be careful, please. I don't want to lose. She stopped, the unfinished sentence hanging heavy in the air. I don't want to lose you. That's what she'd been about to say, and they both knew it. I'll be careful, Jae-hoon promised, and meant it in a way he'd never meant anything before. The meeting with the Choi family was set for the following Tuesday at a neutral location in Charlotte, North Carolina. Jae-hoon took Sung-min and 2 other men, leaving the rest of his security team to watch the house. To watch Keza, though he didn't say it out loud. The warehouse was exactly the kind of place where bad things happened. Concrete floors, fluorescent lights, and enough shadows to hide a dozen armed men. The Chois were already there when Jae-hoon arrived, their leader, Han Jae, sitting behind a makeshift table like some kind of discount mob boss. Jae-hoon, good to see you. Where's Ji-won? Han Jae smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Right to business. I always liked that about you. He gestured, and 2 men dragged Ji-won out from a back room. His cousin looked terrible, bruised, beaten, barely able to stand. When he saw Jae-hoon, something like relief crossed his face. Hyung. Cousin. I'm sorry, I didn't. Shut up. Jae-hoon's voice was ice. He turned to Han Jae. We had a deal. He works for me. You stay out of my territory. Deals change. Your cousin came to us with interesting information, and we decided to take advantage of it. Han Jae leaned back in his chair. But I'm a reasonable man. You can have him back. For a price. Name it. Your operations in Denver, all of them. Sign them over to me, and Ji-won is yours. Sung-min tensed beside him, but Jae-hoon kept his expression neutral. Denver represented millions in annual revenue, years of careful relationship building. Han Jae wasn't asking for a price. He was asking for surrender. That's not happening. Then I guess your cousin stays with us. Han Jae shrugged. Shame, really. We've grown quite fond of him. Jae-hoon looked at Ji-won, at the cousin who'd betrayed him, who'd put Keza in danger, who'd sold out everything for what? Money? Power? It didn't matter. The old Jae-hoon, the one his father had raised, would have walked away without a second thought. Blood meant nothing in this business. But Keza's words echoed in his mind. Maybe there's a middle path. Here's my counteroffer, Jae-hoon said. You give me Ji-won, and I don't burn your entire organization to the ground. Because if you think I came here without insurance, without contingency plans, you're even dumber than you look. Han Jae's smile vanished. You're threatening me? I'm educating you. See, while you were busy congratulating yourself on turning my cousin, I was documenting every single illegal transaction you've made in the last year. Bank accounts, shell companies, dirty cops on your payroll. All of it. He pulled out his phone, showing a preview of files that made Han Jae's face go pale. One button and this goes to the FBI, the IRS, and every news outlet in the country. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, Han Jae waved his hand, and his men released Ji-won. Take him. But this isn't over, Jae-hoon. It is if you're smart. Jae-hoon hauled Ji-won up, half carrying him toward the exit. Come near me or mine again, and there won't be enough left of you to bury. They made it to the car without incident, though Jae-hoon's heart didn't stop pounding until they were 20 miles outside Charlotte. In the back seat, Ji-won was crying, mumbling apologies that Jae-hoon didn't want to hear. Sung-min, take us to the safe house in Richmond. Ji-won stays there until I figure out what to do with him. You're not going to... Ji-won's voice was small, terrified. Kill you. No. Jae-hoon met his cousin's eyes in the rearview mirror. But you're done. Out of the organization, out of my life. You get a small monthly stipend and a chance to disappear somewhere far away from here. That's more mercy than you deserve. Thank you. Thank you. I swear I'll... Save it. I don't want your gratitude. I just want you gone." The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When they finally reached the safe house, Jae-hoon watched as Ji-won was taken inside, watched as the last piece of his blood family was cut away like a diseased limb. It should have hurt more. Maybe it would later, when the adrenaline wore off and he had time to process everything. But right now, all he felt was exhausted relief and an overwhelming need to get home, to get back to Keza. He made it to Atlanta by midnight, waving off Sung-min's offer to come inside. The penthouse was dark except for a single lamp in the living room, and for a moment, Jae-hoon thought maybe Keza had gone to bed. Then he saw her curled up on the couch, a book in her lap, clearly trying to stay awake. "You didn't have to wait up?" She jumped, nearly dropping the book. "I wanted to make sure you came back okay." Her eyes scanned him, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No. Tired, but not hurt." "And your cousin?" "Alive. Exiled. It's handled." He sat down beside her, suddenly aware of how close they were, how easy it would be to reach out and touch her. "You were right, by the way, about the middle path." "What did you do?" He told her everything, about the confrontation, the threats, the choice to let Ji-won live. And as he talked, Keza listened with those dark, understanding eyes, not judging, not offering platitudes, just being there. "I'm proud of you," she said when he finished. The words hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had said that to him? When was the last time he'd done something worth being proud of? It wasn't mercy. I just didn't want more blood on my hands. Maybe that's the same thing. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. "You chose to be better than what this life demands. That matters." Jae-hoon looked down at their hands, at the way her fingers fit against his like they belonged there. This was dangerous territory, crossing lines he'd sworn to maintain. But he was so tired of being alone, so tired of pretending he didn't feel what he felt. "Keza, don't." She shook her head. "Don't say it. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I'm scared. Because you're my employer, and I'm your employee, and there are 1,000 reasons this is a terrible idea." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And because if you say it, if you make this real, I won't be able to pretend I don't feel it too." He should have pulled away, should have put distance between them, gone back to professional boundaries and safe emotional territory. Instead, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then I won't say it. Not tonight." Her breath caught, and for a moment, they just sat there, hands clasped, hearts pounding, balanced on the edge of something neither of them knew how to navigate. "You should get some sleep," Keza finally said, though she didn't pull her hand away. "So should you." "In a minute. I just want to sit here a little longer." So they did, sitting in the lamplight, while Atlanta hummed outside the windows, two people who'd survived impossible things, trying to figure out if they were brave enough to survive falling in love. The next morning brought complications Jae-hoon hadn't anticipated. He was in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee, and failing spectacularly when his phone rang. Unknown number, which usually meant trouble. "Yeah?" "Jae-hoon Park?" A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm an immigration attorney, and I'm calling about Keza Mukamana." Jae-hoon's blood turned to ice. "What about her?" "Her asylum case is being reviewed. There's a hearing scheduled for 2 weeks from now, and she needs legal representation. I was hoping we could meet to discuss." "What do you mean, reviewed? She already has asylum." "Temporary protected status, yes. But there's been a challenge filed by... Well, that's something I'd rather discuss in person. Can you have Ms. Mukamana call me?" Jae-hoon wrote down the number, his mind racing. "I'll have her call you today." When he hung up, Keza was standing in the doorway, her face pale. How much did you hear? Enough. She wrapped her arms around herself. I knew this was coming. They told me at the refugee center that my status might not be permanent, that someone could challenge it. But I hoped I had more time. Who would challenge your asylum case? She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then, in a voice so soft he almost missed it. My husband. The word hit him like a punch to the gut. Your what? Ex-husband. Technically. Keza sank into a chair, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. We were married when I was 18. Arranged by our families, traditional, I thought. I thought it would be okay. But he was cruel, controlling. When the militia came, when they took me. She stopped, breathing hard. He told them where to find me. He helped them because I'd tried to leave him a month before. Jae-hoon felt rage building in his chest, hot and dangerous. He's here, in America. He came 6 months ago, business visa. I didn't know until I saw him in a grocery store in Buckhead last month. Her hands were shaking. He found me, Jae-hoon. He knows where I am, and now he's trying to get my asylum revoked so he can force me to go back with him. That's not gonna happen. You don't understand. He has money, connections. He's already twisting the story, telling officials that I lied on my application, that I wasn't really in danger. And technically, she laughed, the sound bitter and broken. Technically, he's right. I left out the part about him being complicit because I was ashamed, because I thought no one would believe me. Jae-hoon knelt in front of her, taking her trembling hands in his. Listen to me. You're not going back. You're not going anywhere. I don't care how much money he has or who he knows. You're safe here. You can't promise that. Watch me. He pulled out his phone, dialing Sung Min. I need you to find everything on someone. Names. What's his name? Nkubito. Olivier Nkubito. Jae-hoon repeated it into the phone. Everything. Bank records, visa status, where he's staying, who he's meeting with. I want his whole life in a file by end of day. On it, boss. When he hung up, Keza was staring at him with something like wonder and fear mixed together. Why are you doing this? Because you matter to me, because nobody gets to hurt you and walk away from it. He hesitated, then added quietly. And because maybe I'm tired of pretending I don't care about people. Maybe you've made me want to be better than the man my father raised. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and without thinking, Jae-hoon reached up to brush them away with his thumbs. The gesture was tender, intimate, in a way that had nothing to do with desire, and everything to do with something deeper, more terrifying. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. Of losing my asylum? Of losing you. The admission hung between them, too honest, too raw. But Jae-hoon didn't take it back, didn't try to soften it with jokes or deflection. He'd spent his whole life hiding behind walls and masks, and he was done. At least with her, at least in this moment, he wanted to be real. Keza leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, hearts beating the same scared rhythm, while morning light streamed through the windows and the world kept turning outside. We'll figure this out, Jae-hoon said finally. Together. Together, she echoed, and it sounded like a promise. The file on Olivier Nkubito arrived that evening, and it was worse than Jae-hoon had imagined. Wealthy businessman, legitimate on paper, but with connections to some very dangerous people. He'd built an import-export empire that almost certainly involved connections to dangerous criminal networks, and he'd been in Atlanta for 3 months, not 6 like Keza thought, which meant he'd been watching her, planning this, long before she'd spotted him in that grocery store. He's staying at the Ritz in Midtown, Sung Min said, pointing to surveillance photos. Meets regularly with a lawyer named Benedict Shaw, immigration specialist, with a reputation for playing dirty. They're building a case that Keza committed fraud on her asylum application. Can they prove it? They don't have to prove it. They just have to create enough doubt to get her status revoked and force a deportation hearing. Sung-min's expression was grim, and Shaw's good at creating doubt. Jae-hoon studied the photos, memorizing Olivier's face. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like every other predator Jae-hoon had ever dealt with. Polished surface hiding rot underneath. What about our lawyer, the one who called this morning? Claire Whitmore, former prosecutor, switched to immigration law 5 years ago. Win rate of about 70%, which is good, but not great. Sung-min paused. Thing is, boss, this isn't really about legal arguments. It's about power. And Olivier has the kind of money that buys favorable outcomes. So do I. Yeah, but you're not exactly legitimate. You start throwing your weight around in immigration court, people are going to ask questions about where that money comes from. Jae-hoon knew he was right, but he didn't care. Set up a meeting with Whitmore tomorrow morning and find out everything you can about Judge Morrison. He's the one hearing the case according to these documents. You thinking about buying a judge? I'm thinking about evening the playing field. After Sung-min left, Jae-hoon sat alone with the file. Rage, simmering just below the surface. Men like Olivier were the worst kind of predator. They used law and money and social standing to hurt people, then hid behind respectability, while their victims suffered in silence. Not this time. This time, Olivier had picked the wrong target. Keza found him an hour later, still sitting in the dark with just the city lights for illumination. You're brooding. I'm planning. Same thing. She sat beside him, not touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. What did you find out? He told her, watching her face carefully for signs that the information was too much, too overwhelming. But Keza just listened, her expression growing harder with each detail. He's been here for 3 months, she said finally. 3 months, and I didn't know. I thought I was being careful, thought I was safe. You are safe. I won't let him take you. You keep saying that, but Jae-hoon, this is immigration court. It's not like your world where money and threats can fix everything. There are rules, procedures. If the judge rules against me, then we'll appeal. We'll fight it at every level. And if that doesn't work, the question hung heavy between them. If all legal options failed, if Keza's asylum was revoked and deportation orders issued, what then? Jae-hoon had connections, could probably get her out of the country illegally, set her up somewhere with a new identity. But that meant running, hiding, living in fear forever. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he said quietly. We've got 2 weeks to build a case, and I've got resources Olivier doesn't know about. We're not beaten yet. Keza nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes, the way her hands twisted together in her lap. Without thinking, he reached over and stilled them with his own hands, threading their fingers together. Talk to me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that I finally found something worth staying for, and it's all about to be ripped away. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm thinking that maybe I should just go back, face whatever comes, before more people get hurt because of me. Don't. The word came out sharper than he'd intended. Don't you dare give up. Not now, not ever. I'm tired, Jae-hoon. I'm so tired of fighting, of running, of being afraid. Maybe. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived things that would have destroyed most people, and you're still here, still fighting, still living. Don't let him take that from you. Don't let him win. But what if I can't? You can. We can. He pressed his forehead to hers, the gesture becoming familiar, comforting. I know I'm asking you to trust me, to believe in something when you've been given every reason not to trust anyone. But I'm here, Keza. I'm not going anywhere. And I will burn the whole world down before I let him hurt you again. She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. Why? Why do you care so much? Because I love you. The words sat on his tongue, begging to be spoken. But it was too soon, too raw, too dangerous to say out loud. So instead, he said the only other truth he had. Because you made me remember what it feels like to be human. Because you see me. Not the organization. Not the money. Not the reputation. Just me. And nobody's done that since. He stopped, swallowing hard. Nobody's ever done that. Keza opened her eyes, and they were swimming with emotions he couldn't name. Slowly, carefully, she reached up and placed her hand against his chest, right over his heart. I see you, she whispered. All of you. The good parts, and the broken parts, and everything in between. And I'm not going anywhere either. The kiss happened so naturally he almost didn't realize it was happening. Just a soft press of lips to her forehead, gentle and reverent, full of everything he couldn't put into words. Keza sighed against him, her hands clutching his shirt, like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the darkness, taking comfort in heartbeats, and shared warmth and the simple fact that they weren't alone anymore. Finally, Keza pulled back, wiping her eyes. We should probably get some sleep. Big day tomorrow with the lawyer. Probably. But neither of them moved, neither wanting to break the spell of this moment. Jae-hoon? Yeah? Thank you. For caring. For fighting. For... She smiled, sad and sweet. For seeing me too. After she left, Jae-hoon sat in the darkness and made a decision. He was going to protect Keza, no matter the cost. And if that meant revealing things about himself he'd kept hidden, using methods he'd sworn to avoid, crossing lines he'd never thought he'd cross. So be it. Some things were worth the risk. She was worth the risk. The meeting with Claire Whitmore happened in a conference room at her downtown office. She was younger than Jae-hoon, expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Park, Ms. Mukamana, thank you for coming. She gestured to chairs. I've reviewed the challenge to your asylum status, Keza, and I'm not going to lie, it's concerning. How bad? Keza asked, her voice steady despite the fear Jae-hoon could see in her eyes. They're claiming you omitted material facts from your application, specifically that you were married to Mr. Nkubito, and that he's disputing your account of events in Rwanda. They've got affidavits from people who claim the attack on your village wasn't as severe as you described, that you left voluntarily. That's a lie, all of it. I believe you. But belief isn't proof, and in immigration court, the burden is on you to prove your case. Claire leaned forward. I need you to tell me everything, even the parts you left out before, especially those parts. So Keza told her story again, this time including all the painful details she'd omitted from her original application. About the arranged marriage, the abuse, the escape attempt that had led Olivier to betray her to the militia. About the months of captivity, the things done to her and the other prisoners that she could barely speak about without her voice breaking. Claire took notes, her expression neutral, but her jaw tight. When Keza finished, the lawyer sat back. This is what we should have had from the beginning. With this information, we can build a much stronger case. But I lied on my application, Keza said. By omission, maybe. But still. You omitted details about your marriage, yes. But you didn't lie about the persecution, the danger, or your fear of returning. Those are the material facts for asylum. Claire's expression softened slightly. I've seen this before, Keza. Victims often leave out the most painful parts of their stories because they're ashamed, or scared, or traumatized. Courts understand that. So we have a chance? We have more than a chance. We have A case. Claire turned to Jae-hoon. But I need to ask, what's your involvement here? You're listed as her employer, but this feels like more than professional concern. Jae-hoon met her eyes. It is more. I care about what happens to her. Romantic involvement could complicate things. So could standing by and watching someone I care about get destroyed by a system that's supposed to protect her. Claire studied them both, then nodded slowly. Okay. Just be prepared for Shaw to use your relationship against us. He'll paint it as Kiza using you for protection, as evidence of unstable character, or something equally ridiculous. Let him try, Jae-hoon said coldly. I've dealt with sharks before. After the meeting, they drove back to the penthouse in silence. Kiza stared out the window, watching Atlanta blur past, lost in thoughts Jae-hoon could only guess at. You okay? He asked finally. I don't know. Maybe? She turned to look at him. Having to tell all of that again, to lay out every horrible thing that happened. It brought it all back. Like I'm still there, still trapped. Jae-hoon reached over, taking her hand. You're not there. You're here, with me, and you're safe. Am I, though? Because it feels like Olivier's reach is everywhere, like he's always going to find a way to hurt me. Not this time. This time, you've got someone fighting back. She squeezed his hand. I'm not used to having someone on my side. It's strange. Good strange. But strange. They spent the rest of the day preparing for the hearing. Claire sent over a list of documents they'd need, people who might be willing to testify on Kiza's behalf. It was exhausting work, digging up proof of a past Kiza wanted to forget. That evening, Jae-hoon found her on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. He brought 2 glasses of wine, handing her one. You don't drink, she said, surprised. Tonight I do. Feels like we could both use it. They stood side by side, sipping wine and watching the world below. After a while, Kiza spoke. Tell me about your father. The real story, not the sanitized version. Jae-hoon wasn't sure why he wanted to tell her, only that the words came easier with her than they'd ever come with anyone else. He was a monster, really. Built his empire on blood and fear. Taught me to do the same. I was 12 when I saw what his world really cost. 15 when I had to make impossible choices to survive. He took a long drink. He said it was necessary. Said emotion was weakness and love was a trap. And I believed him because he was my father, and I didn't know any better. But you got out, did I? I'm still running his organization, still making the same kind of deals, still surrounded by violence and lies. He looked at her. Until you, I thought this was all there was, this endless cycle of power and paranoia. And now? Now I think maybe there's more. Maybe I don't have to be what he made me. Jae-hoon set down his glass. You make me want to be better, Kiza. And I don't know if I can be, if it's even possible to change this much. But I want to try. She turned to face him fully, her eyes searching his. You're already better than you think you are. The fact that you question yourself, that you care about being good. Your father never did that, did he? No. He was always certain, always convinced he was right. Then you're not him. You're not even close. She reached up, her hand gentle against his cheek. You're Jae-hoon, stubborn, protective, surprisingly kind when you think no one's looking. And that's enough. You're enough. Something in his chest cracked open at those words, some ancient wound he'd been carrying since childhood. Before he could think better of it, he pulled her into his arms, holding her close while the city sparkled below and the night air wrapped around them. I don't deserve you, he murmured into her hair. Good thing it's not about deserving then. It's about choosing, about showing up, about fighting for what matters. She pulled back just enough to look at him. And you showed up for me, Jae-hoon. That's everything. He kissed her forehead, soft and lingering, pouring all the feelings he couldn't say into the gesture. And when they finally went inside, they fell asleep on the couch together, hands intertwined, finding peace in proximity. The next week was a blur of preparation and anxiety. Claire worked tirelessly on the case, while Sung-min kept tabs on Olivier's movements. They discovered he was meeting with immigration officials, probably greasing palms and spinning his narrative. But Jae-hoon had his own connections, his own ways of applying pressure. 3 days before the hearing, everything changed. Sung-min called at 2 in the morning, his voice urgent. "We've got a problem, big one." "What happened?" "Olivier's not working alone. He's got backing from a Korean organization out of Los Angeles, the Kim family." Jae-hoon went cold. The Kims were old rivals, had been trying to push into his territory for years. "Why would they care about Keza?" "They don't, but they care about you. Word is, they found out about your relationship with her and decided to use it against you. They're funding Olivier's legal team, providing resources, all to destabilize your position. So this was never about Keza, it was about getting to me." "Looks like it. And boss, there's more. They've got evidence of some of your less legal activities. They're threatening to leak it to the feds if you interfere with the asylum case." Jae-hoon's mind raced. If the Kims exposed him, it wasn't just his freedom at risk. It was everyone who worked for him, everyone who depended on him. But if he backed off, Keza lost everything. Not a choice, really. It had never been a choice. "Let them leak it. I'm not abandoning her." "Boss, think about this." "I have. Get me a meeting with the Kim's leadership. Tomorrow, I'll handle this myself." When he hung up, Keza was standing in the doorway, having heard enough to understand. "You can't sacrifice everything for me. Watch me. Jae-hoon, please, this is exactly what they want. They're using me to destroy you. Then we'll be destroyed together, because I'm not letting you face this alone, and I'm done letting fear dictate my choices." He crossed to her, taking her hands. "My whole life, I've played it safe, kept my distance, protected myself above all else. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being alone in a world full of people. You changed that. You made me feel alive again, made me remember what it's like to care about something more than survival. So no, I'm not backing down. Not now, not ever." Tears streamed down her face. "What if we lose? Then we lose. But at least we'll lose fighting, standing together instead of apart." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you, Keza. I should have said it before, should have been brave enough to admit it. But I'm saying it now. I love you, and nothing the Kims or Olivier or anyone else does will change that." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me." "Good. We can be terrified together." They held each other while the dawn broke outside, two people who'd found something worth fighting for in each other. And when morning came, Jae-hoon went to war. The meeting with the Kim family took place in a private room at an upscale restaurant in Buckhead. Jae-hoon went alone, despite Sung-min's protests, because this wasn't about intimidation or muscle. This was about making them understand the cost of their interference. David Kim, the organization's current head, was waiting with his brother Michael and their lawyer. They looked confident, comfortable, like men who'd already won. "Jae-hoon, good of you to come. Let's skip the pleasantries. You're backing Olivier Incubito, using him to get to me." "Why?" David smiled. "Business. Your territory in Denver has been very profitable, and we'd like a piece of it. When we discovered your attachment to the Rwandan woman, it seemed like an elegant solution. You back off, we help Olivier, everyone gets what they want. Except Keza. She's collateral damage, unfortunate but necessary." Jae-hoon leaned forward, his voice deadly quiet. Here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to withdraw your support from Olivier, publicly distance yourself from his case, and disappear from my life. In return, I won't expose every illegal operation you're running to federal authorities." Michael laughed. "You think we're afraid of exposure? We've got protection, same as you." "Not like mine. See, while you were busy playing games with Kaysa's asylum case, I was busy documenting every bribe, every payoff, every dirty transaction you've made in the last 5 years. And unlike you, I don't bluff." He slid a folder across the table. "That's just a sample. The full file goes to the FBI, IRS, and Homeland Security if anything happens to Kaysa, or if her case is affected by your interference." David flipped through the folder, his expression darkening with each page. "Where did you get this? Does it matter? What matters is that I have it, and I'm willing to use it. You'd destroy yourself in the process. Your operations aren't exactly clean either." "True, but I'm willing to burn it all down if it means protecting her. Are you willing to lose everything for a territory dispute?" Jae-hoon stood. "Think carefully, because this offer expires the moment I walk out that door." He made it halfway to the exit before David called out, "Wait." Jae-hoon turned. "You'd really do it? Sacrifice your entire organization for some woman?" "She's not some woman. She's everything. And yeah, I'd burn the world down for her without a second thought." He met David's eyes. "That's the difference between us. You see people as pawns. I see them as worth saving." David exchanged looks with his brother. Some silent communication passing between them. Finally, he nodded. "Fine. We'll back off. But Jae-hoon, this isn't over. You've made an enemy today." "I've had enemies before. I'm still here." The drive back to the penthouse felt longer than usual, adrenaline slowly draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. But there was also relief, a sense that he'd finally done something right, something worthy of the woman waiting for him at home. Kaysa met him at the door, her face anxious. "What happened?" "They backed off. Olivier loses his support, and the Kims stay out of our business." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He pulled her into his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her. "It's not over. We still have the hearing, still have to face Olivier and his lawyer. But at least now it's a fair fight." She clung to him, her body shaking with relief. "I can't believe you did that. Risked everything. I told you, you're worth it." They stood in the entryway, holding each other, while the world kept spinning outside. And for the first time in longer than Jae-hoon could remember, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Jae-hoon dressed carefully, choosing a suit that said respectable businessman rather than mob boss. Kaysa wore a simple blue dress that made her skin glow, her hair pulled back in a way that showed her face clearly. "You ready?" he asked as they drove to the courthouse. "No, but I'm going anyway." Claire met them outside the courtroom, her expression grim. "Olivier's here with Shaw. They look confident, which worries me." "They always look confident. Doesn't mean anything." "Still, be prepared for anything." The courtroom was smaller than Jae-hoon expected, almost intimate. Judge Morrison sat behind a raised bench, looking tired and slightly annoyed to be there. Olivier sat at the opposite table with his lawyer, looking every inch the respectable businessman. When his eyes found Kaysa, something predatory flashed across his face. Jae-hoon's hands clenched into fists, but Kaysa's touch on his arm steadied him. "Don't." He's trying to get a reaction. "It's working. I know. But we're better than this, remember. We don't sink to his level." The hearing began with Shaw presenting Olivier's case. He painted Kaysa as a liar and opportunist, someone who'd fabricated her persecution story to gain entry to the United States. He had affidavits from people in Rwanda claiming the attack on her village was minimal, that she'd left of her own accord. Furthermore, Shaw said smoothly. Ms. Mukamana failed to disclose her marriage to my client, a material omission that calls into question the veracity of her entire application. We're asking that her asylum status be revoked immediately. Then it was Claire's turn. She methodically dismantled Shaw's arguments, presenting evidence of the attack, medical records documenting Keiza's injuries, testimony from other survivors who'd made it to the States. She explained the omission about the marriage as the action of a traumatized abuse victim, not deliberate fraud. Your Honor, Ms. Mukamana didn't lie about the persecution she faced. She simply couldn't bear to relive the fact that her own husband had betrayed her to her captors. That's not fraud. That's trauma. Judge Morrison listened to both sides, occasionally asking questions. When the arguments concluded, he leaned back in his chair. I'm going to take a brief recess to review the evidence. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Those 30 minutes felt like an eternity. Jae-hoon and Keiza sat in the hallway, not speaking, just holding hands and trying to breathe. Whatever happens, Keiza said quietly, thank you. For everything. Don't talk like it's over. I'm just preparing myself. In case, no. He turned to face her fully. We're not giving up. Not until the very end. When they were called back in, Judge Morrison looked at Keiza with an expression that was hard to read. Ms. Mukamana, I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I have some concerns about the omission regarding your marriage. However, having read the medical reports and heard the testimony, I'm inclined to believe that omission was the result of trauma rather than intentional fraud. Keiza's hand tightened on Jae-hoon's. That said, Mr. Ankubito's challenge has raised legitimate questions that require further investigation. Therefore, I'm ordering a continuance. Your asylum status will remain in place pending additional review, which I'm ordering to be completed within 90 days. At that time, we'll have another hearing to make a final determination. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. Just more waiting, more uncertainty. Shaw stood immediately. Your Honor, we object. The evidence clearly shows. Your objection is noted and overruled, Mr. Shaw. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Claire looked relieved. That was actually the best outcome we could have hoped for. Morrison is giving us time to build an even stronger case. So, we're safe for now? For 90 days, yes. But we need to use that time wisely. She looked at Keiza. I'll need more documentation, more witnesses if possible. People who can corroborate your story, beyond what we already have. I'll get you whatever you need, Jae-hoon said firmly. After Claire left, Jae-hoon and Keiza stood on the courthouse steps, watching people stream past on their way to their own legal battles. 90 days, Keiza said. 3 months to prove my whole life isn't a lie. We'll do it. We'll find everything we need, and then some. She leaned against him, exhausted. I just want it to be over. I want to stop looking over my shoulder, stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I know. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But until then, you've got me. Every single day, you've got me. The next few weeks settled into a new normal. Claire worked on gathering additional evidence, while Sung-min kept eyes on Olivier, making sure he didn't try anything outside the legal system. And Jae-hoon learned what it meant to actually be in a relationship. They'd never officially defined what they were to each other, but it didn't matter. The labels felt unimportant compared to the reality of shared mornings and late-night conversations, of cooking together and falling asleep with their fingers intertwined. One evening, Keiza was making Rwandan food. Ibihaza, a dish her mother had taught her before everything fell apart. The kitchen smelled amazing, spices and vegetables combining into something that made Jae-hoon's mouth water. Can I help? She looked up, surprised. You want to cook? I want to learn. This is important to you, so it's important to me. She showed him how to chop the vegetables properly, how to layer the flavors just right. Their hands bumped as they worked, comfortable touches that sent warmth through his chest. My mother always said that food is how we remember, Keza said softly. Every dish carries a story, a piece of who we were. Tell me about her. Your mother? Keza smiled, sad but genuine. She was strong, stronger than anyone I've ever known. She survived the genocide in the 90s, rebuilt her life from nothing, raised 3 children mostly alone because my father died when I was young. She stirred the pot slowly. She taught me that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying human, about holding on to the things that make life worth living. Like food. Like food. Like stories. Like love. She met his eyes. She would have liked you, I think. She always said strength without kindness is just brutality, but kindness without strength is just weakness. You have both. The compliment settled over him like a warm blanket. I wish I could have met her. Me too, Keza's voice cracked slightly. She died in the attack, trying to protect me, trying to fight them off if I'd just stayed hidden like she told me to. Hey. Jae-hoon turned her to face him. Don't do that. Don't blame yourself for surviving. But she died because of me. She died protecting what she loved most. That's not your fault. It's a testament to how much she cared about you. He brushed a tear from her cheek. And I think she'd be proud of you, of how you've survived, how you've built a life here, how you haven't let the trauma destroy who you are. Keza nodded, unable to speak. Jae-hoon pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried for the mother she'd lost, for the life that had been stolen from her. And when she finally pulled back, he kissed her forehead gently. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For letting me be sad, for not trying to fix it or make it better, just for being here. They finished cooking together, and the ibihaza turned out perfect. As they ate, Keza told him stories about her childhood, about growing up in a country still healing from genocide, about dreams she'd had before everything fell apart. I wanted to be a teacher, she said. I loved books, loved learning, loved the idea of helping kids discover the world through education. You still could. Once all this is settled. Maybe. But I'm different now. That girl who wanted to teach, she died in that village with my mother. Or maybe she's just changed, adapted, become someone stronger. Jae-hoon reached across the table, taking her hand. You don't have to be who you were before. You can be whoever you want to be now. She smiled. Who do you want to be, Jae-hoon? If you could be anyone, do anything? It was a question nobody had ever asked him before. His father had dictated his path, the organization had cemented it, and he'd never thought to question whether it was what he actually wanted. I don't know, he admitted. For so long, I've just been what I needed to be to survive, to succeed. But lately, I've been thinking about doing something different. Something that actually helps people instead of just enriching myself. Like what? Maybe legitimate business. Use the money I've made to build something real, something legal. He paused. Maybe work with refugees. Help people like you who are trying to start over. Keza's eyes widened. You'd do that? For you? I'd do anything. The moment hung between them, full of possibility and promise. Then Keza stood, walking around the table to sit in his lap, her arms around his neck. I love you, she said simply. I love who you are, and who you're becoming, and every complicated piece in between. Jae-hoon kissed her cheek, then her other cheek, gentle touches that made her smile. I love you too, more than I knew I could love anything. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other while the city hummed outside, 2 people finding healing in unexpected places. The 90 days passed faster than Jae-hoon wanted. Claire assembled an impressive case. More witnesses, more documentation, expert testimony about trauma, and why victims often omit painful details. They even found the doctor who'd first treated Keza when she escaped, who could testify about her injuries and psychological state. But Olivier wasn't backing down either. He brought in his own experts, people who questioned Keza's credibility, who suggested she was manipulating the system. The second hearing was more intense than the first. Shaw hammered at Keza during cross-examination, trying to trip her up, to make her contradict herself. But she held firm, answering each question with quiet dignity. When it was Olivier's turn to testify, Jae-hoon had to physically restrain himself from reacting. The man lied so smoothly, painting himself as a concerned husband, trying to save his troubled wife from her own delusions. "I love Keza," Olivier said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I just want to bring her home, get her the help she needs." Jae-hoon wanted to shout, to call him out for the monster he was. But Keza's hand on his arm kept him grounded. Finally, after hours of testimony, Judge Morrison called for a recess to make his decision. This time, the wait was even worse because they knew this was it. No more continuances, no more delays. Whatever Morrison decided would stand. When they were called back in, the judge looked directly at Keza. "Ms. Mukamana, I've considered all the evidence presented over the course of these hearings. While I have concerns about the initial omission regarding your marriage, I'm persuaded by the medical and psychological expert testimony that this omission was the result of trauma rather than intentional fraud." He paused. "Furthermore, the evidence of persecution you've faced is overwhelming and credible. Therefore, I'm denying Mr. Nkubito's challenge and upholding your asylum status." The relief was so intense that Jae-hoon almost couldn't breathe. Keza collapsed against him, sobbing, while Claire smiled triumphantly. Olivier stood abruptly, his face twisted with rage. "This is ridiculous! She's a liar! A fraud!" "Mr. Nkubito, you will control yourself in my courtroom," Morrison said sharply. "This hearing is concluded. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Nkubito out." As Olivier was led away, still protesting, he locked eyes with Keza one last time. This isn't over. But it was. Jae-hoon made sure of it. That night, he called in every favor he had, used every connection in his network. By morning, Olivier's business visa was under investigation for fraud. His import-export company was being audited by 3 different federal agencies, and certain information about his involvement with militia groups in Rwanda had mysteriously found its way to Interpol. Olivier would be lucky to avoid deportation himself, much less threaten Keza again. When Sung-min reported that Olivier had fled the country, presumably back to Rwanda to avoid prosecution, Jae-hoon felt something release in his chest. It was done. She was safe. He found Keza on the balcony, her favorite spot for thinking. She turned when she heard him approach, her face peaceful in a way he'd never seen before. "It's over," she said wonderingly. "It's actually over. It's over." She launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, spinning her around while she laughed. When he set her down, she cupped his face in her hands. "Thank you. For everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. For loving me when I'd forgotten how to love myself. You don't have to thank me. Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." She kissed his cheek, soft and sweet. "What happens now?" "Now? Now we figure out what comes next, together." He took her hands. "I meant what I said before, about changing things, about building something legitimate. And I want you with me, every step of the way." "As what? Your maid?" She was teasing, her eyes bright with humor. "As my partner, in business and in life and in everything else." He hesitated, then added, "Eventually, if you want. As my wife." Keza's breath caught. "You're proposing?" "Not yet. Not when everything's been so chaotic. But I'm promising, when the time is right, when we've both had a chance to heal and breathe and just be, I'm going to ask you properly. And I really hope you'll say yes. I will, she whispered. Whenever you ask, however you ask, the answer is yes. They held each other as the sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And for the first time in their broken, complicated lives, the future felt like something worth hoping for. 6 months later, Jae-hoon stood in front of the newly opened Park Mukamana Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping refugees build new lives in America. Keza stood beside him, her hand in his, smiling at the small crowd gathered for the opening ceremony. This foundation represents a lot of things, Jae-hoon said into the microphone. Second chances, new beginnings, the belief that everyone deserves safety and opportunity. But mostly, it represents love. The kind of love that changes you, that makes you want to be better than you ever thought possible. He looked at Keza, at the woman who'd survived impossible things, and somehow still had room in her heart for him. My partner and I built this because we know what it's like to need help, to need someone to believe in you when the world says you're not worth saving. And we want to be that someone for as many people as we can reach. The applause was warm, genuine. As they cut the ribbon together, Jae-hoon felt something he'd never expected to feel. Pride. Not in money or power or fear, but in doing something that actually mattered. That evening, back at the penthouse that had become their home, Keza found a small box on her pillow. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single stone that caught the light. She turned to find Jae-hoon on one knee, his eyes full of love and hope and just a little fear. I know I said I'd wait for the perfect moment, but then I realized, every moment with you is perfect. Keza Mukamana, you saved my life in ways you'll never fully understand. You made me believe in love, in goodness, in the possibility of redemption. Will you marry me? She dropped to her knees in front of him, taking his face in her hands. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. Everywhere except her lips, saving that sweetness for their wedding day. I love you, he murmured against her skin. I love you too. So much. They stayed on the floor of their bedroom, holding each other close. Two people who'd found healing in the most unexpected place, in each other's arms. And as the city sparkled below, and the future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise, they knew that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because love, real love, wasn't about perfect circumstances or easy paths. It was about showing up, about fighting for each other, about choosing to build something beautiful from broken pieces. And they'd done exactly that. So here's the thing. We pour our hearts into these stories because we believe everyone deserves a love that heals them. If Keza and Jae-hoon's journey made you feel even a fraction of what we felt writing it, smash that like button. Subscribe and stick around. Because trust me, we've got more stories that'll wreck you in the best way possible.